when we talk about child safety, we're not just talking about children being abducted or going missing at holiday destinations and crowded beaches. We should also be mindful about protecting children from circumstances that they simply wouldn't be exposed to if it wasn't the festive season. As you and I know, South Africa has high levels of violence, alcohol abuse, and gender-based violence. So at this time of the year, we ask, how can we protect specifically those who are vulnerable, including our children? Let's speak to Carol Bauer about this. Carol is a child rights consultant and joins us via our video link for more. Carol, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks very much indeed for making time. You know, often we miss the fact that a lot of parents and guardians aren't necessarily able to rely on things like routine during December, which, let's face it, provides a level of protection for children. So without homework, without children being able to go to school, perhaps extramurals, what can parents do to ensure that they don't wander off into dangerous territory in our country?
Well, there are lots of things that can be done. I do need to say that there is no way that you can 100% ensure that nothing bad will happen to your children. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't help them to understand certain aspects of life that make them safer. The one thing that's very important is that when you talk to your children about personal safety, you shouldn't do it in a way that makes them feel scared and fearful. They need to be cautious, alert, prepared, but confident that they can handle themselves so that they don't just freak out and go with whatever's happening. So you also need to teach them to trust their instincts, to trust their own gut feelings. Sometimes when you meet a new child, the parent will say, give the auntie or the uncle a hug or a kiss, and the child doesn't want to. And the parent insists that they must. That's not a good idea, because what that teaches your child is their gut instincts are not valuable, are not valid. So if you're going to meet a new child, don't just kiss the child or hug the child. Say, is it okay if I give you a hug? Let the child know that it's all right to say, no, I don't want to do that. When children have the confidence to trust their own gut feelings, they are much safer than they would otherwise be. And that is perhaps the most important thing that you need to help children to understand, that their views are valid. If they don't have to have any other reason except that they don't want to. If they don't want to, just as if you don't want to, as an adult, they don't have to either.
That's fascinating,
Also
Carol.
help children.
I beg your pardon.
Help children to...
Go ahead.
Sorry. Help children to understand that it's okay to say no, and that there's a big difference between good secrets and bad secrets. Good secrets are things like Christmas presents or a surprise party or, those kinds of things. Help your children to tell the difference, because many times what adults do is tell children they mustn't tell anybody. It's a secret. In fact, almost always that is what happens. So children need to understand that it's okay. Also, how to identify trusted adults. So, for example, if your children are old enough to go to a mall on their own with their friends, that's fine, as long as they're being fetched and dropped and all of those kinds of things. But help them to identify trusted adults. There are always security guards in shopping malls. They can approach a security guard. They can approach somebody at a till. They can approach somebody who's obviously serving in the shop, so that they need to be able to identify who is a trusted adult.
Sure. Yeah, those are also interesting. Let me just come in there, Carol. I beg your pardon. What you've just mentioned about being able to empower children to lean into their gut feeling is so interesting and nuanced, because in many societies, certainly in ours, some people struggle with thinking of children as autonomous bodies, people who can, in some instances, self-govern in a way that increases their safety.
You're absolutely right. In fact, we tend not to see in our society, children as human beings with rights in their own right. We see them as extensions of ourselves. And we try and get them, it happened to me as a child. Kiss the uncle, hug the uncle, otherwise you're seen as unfriendly. That's not the way to go with these things. The way to go is to teach children to trust their own gut feelings. And that will be a lifelong skill. The number of women I've spoken to who have been sexually abused as adults, who have told me that there was a point in the whole interaction where they thought this is not okay. But they didn't want to say anything because they didn't want to appear oversensitive or stupid or, make waves. That's not the way things should be anymore. We live in a world that is too dangerous, with people in it that really do want to hurt children and do hurt children. And the best way to keep our children safe is to teach them to trust themselves, to trust their own feelings, and to validate those feelings. They are real, they are true, and they must be listened to.
There's also a delicate balancing act, right, in ensuring that your child can come to you with any kind of information, no matter how much trouble they think they'll get into. But at the same time, it's important for children to understand the concept of boundaries, right? How do we navigate these two things?
Well, you make a very good point. Children must feel they can tell you anything, which means that you as the parent must also treat them as human beings with rights in their own right and take what they say seriously. You should help them to set body boundaries. We all know about the little songs that you can't touch anybody under the parts covered by their underwear, and they shouldn't be asked to touch anybody else in those places. So those things are important. But you do need to strike a balance between making the child too scared and fearful and being confident and able to take care of themselves. And the best way to do that is to let them see that you trust them to make their own decisions. It's a very important part of raising children, is to teach them how to be decent adults. That's what child rearing is about in the end. And we need to be able to make sure that we help our children to see their viewpoints as valid, their feelings as real, and that they have the ability and the capacity to look after themselves, to have agency for themselves.
Right, absolutely. It's a tough time to be a child, and it's so heartbreaking that more so during December. But Carol Bauer, thanks for helping us think through these very important issues. We appreciate your time on Newsfeed AM this morning. Carol Bauer is a child rights consultant.